want to do, but it's just playing the same thing basically, but just the way you play it, such as and of course you can play very soulful if you want. You can play real fast. And there's a lot of variancies that you can do in there. So it's good to remember all these alphabets of note treatment for projection. Also, another thing I try to remember with projection are dynamics, and that's kind of like the pulse of the music. Now, to me, there are two types of dynamics. There's the larger view of the dynamics, of course, which is in a musical passage where you might want to go from soft to loud. You can really play around with that, and sometimes actually using a soft dynamic, you'll put more power on the note than a loud dynamic. It can work in inverse ways, actually. You can be playing something real soft and then play something real loud out of context, and it will put a certain weight on it. Or you can be playing something very loud and then all of a sudden drop back and play something very, very soft as well. A very important part of dynamics are more of the inner dynamics of the passage of chords or leads you're playing. It's kind of like you're stressing the emphasis where you want the emphasis to be. And I usually think of that like such as the recessive and dominant dynamic qualities of a passage you're making. There's certain notes you want to put more accentuation on. So if I was just going to do, it's just playing the notes, but if I wanted to bring out certain notes and put others back, a type of recessed dominant. One note will be loud, one other note will be soft, will be more recessive to create a swing into the next note. And this is a very important thing to me. That's what gives the kind of breathes life into the particular passage or chords you're playing. And any of these treatments are available at any time to mix and mash and whatever. That's the part of the beauty of it. You can just mix them all up and create your own personal thing. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk about of these aspects is it's kind of having a flair to what you do. I would describe that as kind of the flow people talk about, where you let chances happen or you take chances. You play off the cuff and see what just kind of comes up. And that's one of the things that I like about string skipping, where it's just you have there's a So I'd like to just point out a certain aspect about string skipping, Basically, the way I look at it is you're replacing certain notes into another octave. Say if I was just going to play like, I could play instead. So that would be once again. And one of the advantages that I like about string skipping is if you are in fact coming across a note that could be interchanged with an open string, then it gets even a little more interesting. So if I was going to go like, I could play something kind of the same. I could. Let me just repeat that sort of one more time. Could be replaced with. And one of the ways of string skipping is just to do wider intervals. If I was. So if I was to try to simplify the idea of a string skipping, basically you could take it as if you were just. And then with that passage where it's a lot of just different inversions of either a minor or a major chord, then you just substitute certain notes and you could just put them somewhere else. That's just one of the ways that I like to try to put a little flair in it. You're kind of expanding the way you might typically approach guitar. And these things can always change. One kind of philosophy I try to remember is just always to be a student of the guitar, because that way you always stay open to what you learn. And also a word about practicing. I tend to be a fan of when you're practicing to try to keep an element of fun in it to where you're really enjoying practicing and it doesn't become too dull, because that can keep you from wanting to keep practicing. So part of my practice regimen, actually most of my practice regimen is just to work on songs, and once I find a part I like, then I'll keep working on that and try to better and better that. Okay, and the third aspect I'd like to talk about I call strength and focus. And I believe one way to accomplish this is to not try too hard mentally when you're trying to play a certain musical passage. It's just the same as if we tense our muscles when we play, we won't appropriately be able to execute a passage as well as when we're relaxed. In the same way, if we try too hard mentally, it can affect our performance as well. So sometimes we might not even necessarily think we're playing that well, but we might in fact actually be upon if we were to go back and listen to it again. Sometimes it's, to know when to play with restraint and maybe to fall back on playing a melody instead of a lead solo, you play more melodically. And that'll create more pulse and more dynamics for when you really bear in and play more patterns rather than melodies. So the two kind of go hand in hand and create a kind of an intense dynamic that will keep that pulse going with the music. That's something I try to remember. And a lot of times that means simplifying, so you have those off between the ons. And additionally, patterns and techniques, you should always remember, no matter how much you work on them. It's kind of like getting more books for your library, but that doesn't mean you need to use every book at any given moment. They're merely tools to help to get to a greater creative effort, which is the musical statement and ideas that you're saying. And the destination of that musical idea really should encompass the three important aspects of music, which are melody, harmony, and rhythm. And I try to work on that when I'm composing. So the fourth and final aspect I would like to talk about is signature. And by that I mean trying to create your own original voice. A lot of that will be from the different players that you like. You can kind of amalgamate your own style from all the players that you like, what really keeps you connected and interested in guitar. You can create a certain package of those players, and you can put in your own special articulation. For example, I like to kind of fool around with the coda thing, or the string skipping, or the stretching, notes, or whatever, little techniques that, if you can kind of keep yourself open to finding your own little aspect of articulation, you can add a certain signature to your sound. Now, another way to create a wider aperture of your signature of your sound is to listen to other instruments other than guitar. For instance, I like to listen to violin and piano, and the licks that will be played on those instruments, as well as the way they're attacked, and the tonality of them will be somewhat different than even